There's a petition going around that is demanding President Trump to ban critical race theory in government. And this petition stems from the National Nuclear Lab, Sandia Labs, which sent their employees to a seminar that claimed that rugged individualism and hard work are white male culture, right? That sent them to this re-education camp, effectively. This is where this stems from. Now, I would agree that a lot of these things that the Smithsonian Museum listed off when describing whiteness, I would agree that a lot of these things are definitely white culture, or I think you can better describe them as Western culture, right? This is the correct translation. Individualism, cleaning your community, the scientific method. It's very funny because we have this story from the Washington Post which claims that autopsies uphold white supremacy, and we know that how they say that science and math do be racist, though. Science and math do be racist, though. But they sent them to the seminar, this re-education camp, to basically talk about how they need to break down this white culture, break down this whiteness, this white male culture, or this Western culture more broadly, because some people, blacks in particular, don't assimilate into this culture. They don't want to assimilate in this culture. Some cannot assimilate into this culture. Right? We all saw what Don Lemon said 7 years ago in that clip. I didn't say it. He said it. He said, black people need to start pulling up their pants. This is what he said. I mean, this was 7 years ago, 2013 on CNN. 6 years ago, actually, just to show you how far we have come, how far we have gone, actually. I think it was the best way to put it. He said they need to pull up their pants. They need to stop making it uncool to go to school. They need to start speaking with proper English. Now, a lot of them can. A lot of them that just think it's uncool to speak with proper English, to articulate your point, to articulate your opinion. Stop, having children with 5 women. This is sort of like a de-assimilation of a culture that we're watching here. Right? We saw that it wasn't like this in the 1950s with black Americans. It wasn't like this. 1950s, 1960s, up until the 19s, it wasn't really like this. And so this is what Don Lemon said. But see, they're sending employees to these re-education camps to teach them how to break down this culture so that they lower the bar for others to achieve. And we're seeing this all across academia. We're seeing this all across colleges, universities, corporations. Right? They're lowering the bar. Watch the movie Idiocracy. Anyway, so I want to get to this Tucker Carlson segment, another Tucker Carlson segment. Let me bring up this window capture here. I want to bring up the correct window capture. And so you know the story. National Nuclear Labs employees sent to seminar that claimed rugged individualism and hard work are white male culture. And then there was another thing that was exposed by Christopher Rufo. I think that's his name, right? Christopher, he's on Tucker Carlson all the time. Christopher F. Rufo, talking about the Seattle Office of Civil Rights Training on internalized racial superiority for white people, talking about whiteness again. And he had this big, long thread about this, Christopher Rufo did, where he talked about how he revealed these training documents and PowerPoint that were presented to white employees, that were presented to the white people that had worked for the Seattle City Council. And then he was on Tucker Carlson. He was on Tucker Carlson last night, I believe it was, calling on President Trump to immediately issue an executive order abolishing critical race theory from the federal government. He says there is no place for this toxic, divisive, pseudoscientific ideology in our public institutions. And there was a couple of countries that I think that have banned race theory, right? I think Hungary is one of them. They definitely banned gender studies. Brazil is another one. I think he banned gender studies. But here's this Tucker Carlson segment right here.
So today we've asked Chris Rufo to walk us through some of what is happening here. You should know the details. Rufo is a research fellow at the Discovery Institute as well as a contributing editor at City Journal, and he joins us now. Chris Rufo, thanks so much for coming on. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much. You know, Tucker, this is something I've been investigating for the last 6 months, and it's absolutely astonishing how critical race theory has pervaded every institution in the federal government. And what I've discovered is that critical race theory has become, in essence, the default ideology of the federal bureaucracy and is now being weaponized against the American people. I'd like to share 3 investigations that I've unleashed that show the kind of depth of this critical race theory, cult indoctrination, and the danger and destruction it can wreak. First, the Treasury Department. I broke the story on the Treasury Department, which held a seminar earlier this year from a man named Howard Ross, a diversity trainer who has billed the federal government more than $5 million over the past 15 years, conducting seminars on critical race theory. And he told Treasury employees essentially that America was a fundamentally white supremacist country, and I quote, virtually all white people uphold the system of racism and white superiority, and was essentially denouncing the country and asking white employees at the Treasury Department and affiliated organizations to accept their white privilege, accept their white racial superiority, and accept essentially all of the baggage that comes with this reducible essence of whiteness. Second, this is not by any means limited to the Treasury Department. Critical race theory has actually now infiltrated our criminal justice system. Just this week, I released a story that the FBI is now holding weekly seminars on intersectionality, which is a hard left academic theory that reduces people to a network of racial, gender, and sexual orientation identities that intersect in complex ways and determine whether you are an oppressor or oppressed. Obviously, with the white straight male, such as FBI Director Christopher Wray, being at the top of this pyramid of evil. And third, this is a major story. Critical race theory is now infiltrating into our scientific establishment. A few weeks ago, I released the story that critical race theorists at the Sandia National Laboratories, which creates our nuclear weapons arsenal, sent their white male executives on a 3-day re-education camp to deconstruct their white male culture and actually force them to write letters of apology to women and people of color. Whistleblowers within Sandia National Laboratories have now spoken out, but laboratory executives have dispatched counterintelligence teams to quickly erase their communications, silence, and shut them down. And this is really the bottom line. There are some great people in D.C., such as Senator Josh Hawley in Missouri, that are starting to push back, but conservatives need to wake up that this is an existential threat to the United States, and the bureaucracy, even under the Trump administration, is now being weaponized against core traditional American values. And I'd like to make it explicit. The President and the White House, it's within their authority and power to immediately issue an executive order abolishing critical race theory trainings from the federal government. And I call on the President to immediately issue this executive order and stamp out this destructive, divisive, pseudo-scientific ideology at its root. And I think that it's something that he's denounced, this kind of Black Lives Matter and neo-Marxist rhetoric in places like Portland and Seattle. But it's time to take action and destroy it within his own administration.
All right, so that's it. So that's what he's calling. He's calling on President Trump to do this. I'm sure. I think that President Trump watches Tucker Carlson. But there's this petition, and it doesn't have a lot of signatures. So we got to get this petition more signatures here. Look at this petition. This is eliminate critical race theory from federal government. I'll post this petition. We'll post this up on my Telegram channel later on today. And on my website, theredelephants.com. And we'll try to get this more signatures. We have to get this into I'll try to, I'll share this with a couple of people I know. I'm going to try to get this petition out there to all of the, into the mainstream conservative sphere. So if this petition gains steam, it will gain steam in the media, and maybe President Trump will pay more attention to this if he didn't watch the Tucker Carlson segment, which I'm sure he did. I mean, I think that he watches Tucker Carlson pretty much every day. One of the things I should mention probably, remember that time when Tucker Carlson traveled down to Mar-a-Lago? And this was in the beginning where Donald Trump thought the coronavirus was a hoax. This is why his instincts are so good. Trump's instincts are so good. He gets it right pretty much every time if he judges things based on his instincts, right? If he goes off of his instincts. So Trump, his instincts told him that, this whole coronavirus thing was like an election hoax, right? It's just a fucking hoax. It's not like fake. We know that it's not fake, but it's just completely overblown. I mean, we just went through the study today from Revolver News. But Tucker Carlson traveled down to Mar-a-Lago because he, like me, thought it was like a real threat and wanted Trump to not say it was a hoax so that he would because he might plunge in the polls, which was probably a correct move at the time. But I just wonder if Trump remembers this, like if Trump holds grudges like this to where he remembers Tucker Carlson telling him that he was wrong on the coronavirus in the beginning, and then he turned out to be right, and now we see what Tucker Carlson is saying in regards to the coronavirus. What does Trump think? Like, we know, like, Lou Dobbs is his favorite guy on Fox News. I don't think he's too fond of Hannity. Maybe he is. I mean, he does play a lot of Hannity clips in his ads, but I just wonder if that had like a lasting effect on the power, on the influence that Tucker Carlson has with President Trump. But like I said, I mean, this is happening in academia as well. So we just have a couple of stories here. This is a news story that just came out September 1st. This is from the San Francisco Chronicle. Judge bars University of California from all use of SAT and ACT scores in admissions. And what they say here is that, because I'm not signed up for this, but what they say here is they're doing this because of privileged white Americans who are privileged financially and privileged socially. And so this is the reason why the judge has barred University of California from all use of SAT, ACT scores in the admissions process. And right now, California is trying to overturn a law that they put in place in the 1960s, which would basically overturn their own Civil Rights Act, which is that it's okay to use race in college admissions. They also proposed a desegregation plan. This is the New York Times from, I think, last year. Their desegregation plan consisted of eliminating all gifted programs in New York because a group of selective schools and programs geared to students labeled gifted and talented is filled mostly with white and Asian children. We just saw this story released from NPR back on August 13th. DOJ has found in their investigation that Yale discriminated against Asian American and white applicants in their admissions process. So they're lowering the bar for everyone else. They're lowering the bar so that everyone else can get ahead to create this equitable society where everyone's the same. I mean, that's what equity means. It's not equality. It's not the same thing as equality. Equity means everyone's the same. Equity means we lower the top achievers in the country. We push them down to make them the same as the lower achievers in the country. That's what they mean by this. We have this article from the Washington Post talking about autopsies. Very convenient, considering the medical examiner document that just came out that declared that under any other circumstances, George Floyd's death would have been ruled a fentanyl overdose, as he had a substantially high amount of fentanyl in his system, probably swallowed a speedball as cops approached. Autopsies can uphold white supremacy. And we've seen the stories about how math is racist and 2 + 2 actually equals 5. And the man who helped write Common Core, one of the main writers for Common Core in the country, which Trump should end. Trump should end this as well while he's banning critical race theory in government in the public sector. But the main writer for Common Core said that he did it to end white privilege. He did it to substantially reduce white privilege in K-12 education. My goal is to eventually become a powerhouse of truth. That is why it is imperative that you check the links in the description below and go to either Patreon and Subscribestar and support us for at least the cost of a cup of coffee a month. We already have writers writing for TheRedElephants.com, but we'd like to bring on more in the near future. By the way, at TheRedElephants.com, you can also find t-shirts, hats, and other products. Check the links in the description below. It helps us out tremendously.